Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into KLIVE. Today, we're talking about books. Hello again. My name is Ashwati, and if you're joining us for the first time, KLIVE is an interactive series where we guide you through your journey to Canada as an international student. We talk about international student life, admissions, and much more. We also, of course, will be talking about the KAEL test. So if you're interested in studying in Canada, please subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as we have a new episode. Today's episode is on a lighter note. We thought we'd recommend some books since summer is approaching. I have the pleasure of welcoming two of my co-workers here today, Jenny and Lynn. Jenny and Lynn are both part of our book club here at Paragon and have some great recommendations for you today. Let's go say hello to them. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Lynn, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. So I was just talking to our viewers and I was telling them how we're going to be talking about books today. So I'm going to start, Jenny, with you, kind of like go into the questions. And I'm very curious to see what book you have for us today. So what's your pick for today?
Well, my pick for today is actually a novel called The Vanishing Half. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I really enjoyed this book when I read it at the end of last year when it first kind of became a big book of the year. And I really thought that it would be a good book to read in the summer. Although I read it in the winter, I think it's a still great book to read in the summer. So yeah, that's what I'm suggesting for today.
I haven't read the book, but I really like the cover at the moment. It looks very interesting. Oh my God, you have to show us your cat.
I'm so sorry. I knew he was going to do this.
You have to show us your cat.
Yeah, he just likes to come when I'm doing meetings. So excuse yourself. Thank you. But he's just going to join us here and there. So please excuse him. But yeah, so this book is actually about an identical twin sister back in a very remote small town in US. And it's mainly a Black community, and they are Black women, but they are very light-skinned. Their family is very like known for light-skinned Black person, and they kind of try to figure out their life as they grow up, and they decide to move away to a bigger city, to move away from the town, and they kind of start living in the city. And then one of the sisters, called Stella, she decides to leave her sister behind and just start her own life by herself, but as a white person. So she basically kind of creates a new persona, that she's a white woman and lives her life as a white woman. And then the story kind of moves ahead to the time where they are both moms. Each of the sisters have a daughter. And then their life kind of as a mom. And then we also get introduced to daughters as well. So their storylines in the book. So kind of story unfolds from there. Big event is that the one sister just kind of decides to, forget the past and leave everything behind and start her new life as a different persona. And that's where kind of everything goes interesting. So yeah.
That's very interesting. I'm really curious. I actually want to read that myself. I'm curious to know if you had like a specific chapter or like a part of the book that was really intriguing to you.
Yeah. So what I really loved about this book particularly was the character development. And like I said, there are 4 main characters. So the twin sisters and then their daughters. And in the book, you get introduced their story as the main character in that chapter or in that storyline, and you kind of like see how their life changes and how their decision making is with different situations that they have over time. And one of my favorite characters is actually one of the daughters, Jude. And I think because her story is so interesting itself, but also we get to see her from when she was a child to when she becomes a university student, like a woman, an adult. So in this book, throughout the book, you can kind of see how she grows up as becoming an adult, and kind of, having her mom and having her aunt and that connection as a family. And so I thought that was the most kind of interesting part of the story. Her story itself was my favorite part.
Thank you for sharing. Lynn, I know you have like another book for us, but I'm curious if you've read this book also.
Yes, I have actually read the book as well and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not the book that I'm going to recommend, but it is definitely a very interesting novel. Discusses quite a lot of contemporary and like current topics as well. Even though it is a fiction, it does discuss a fair amount of topics that are mainstream right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, Jenny, why do you think this would be a great read for the people who are watching us today?
So I, when I was asked to join the live, I really thought about what the book would be the best, like, to pick, and obviously, and the reason why I thought this book would be a good pick is because when you're reading a book in a second language, you sometimes have to think while you're reading the book. And I was an international student myself in the university, and I always had struggles finding a novel or a book that I was able to like invest myself into, because I was overthinking it too much. I was trying to understand every single word. I was trying to understand what the sentence structure is actually, trying to say. And that really made it difficult for me to fall in love with an English written book. So when I read this book, I realized that this book kind of is written in a very simple way, if that makes sense. So like the author writes the sentences in a simple structure. She chooses simple words. So the actual reading experience is not too difficult to understand. And so you get to actually experience the story. You get to actually understand what's going on and understand what the author's trying to tell you, trying to like take you into a journey without having to struggle on like, oh, what is this word? What does this word mean? What is this sentence trying to say? When you're reading for pleasure, you don't want anything that's going to make you feel like you're not, understanding it correctly, and you don't want to struggle while you're reading a book if you want to enjoy the book. And that's why I thought this book was really good, because you can understand the book easily, but the story itself is complex enough that you have to think. You have to really connect the dots. You have to puzzle things together to understand what's going to happen next. And it really makes you think a lot while you're reading it. Like Lynn said, there's a lot of interesting subjects, interesting points that you can discuss with your friends, even with the book. But the way she wrote is so easy to understand that it didn't make me feel like I'm reading a book in English. I was reading it as thinking like it was like my language almost, because it was so easy to read. And another thing is her style of writing is so vivid, so that you can imagine it so easily. And her, like when she describes a scene, you almost feel like you're watching a movie while you're reading the book. So you're able to picture a situation, you're able to picture the background of it, or what the scene is about, like what's happening really easily. And that really kept me interested in the book as well, because you're able to use your imagination to understand the book's story.
Wow. I think I really like the way you kind of explained it, because this was what was going through my head. Because when you were talking about the book itself, the synopsis, I was like, I hope this book is like, the topic is so complex. I hope this book itself, the literature is easy to grasp, but that's exactly what you said. So I'm glad. So for those of you who are watching, Even if you think that you're not that fluent in English, I'm pretty sure this book will be a great read. I'm going to switch to Lynn. Lynn, what book do you have for us today?
I actually have a nonfiction to recommend. It's called Small Wonders Essays, written by Barbara Kingsolver. It is a collection of essays. I use air quotes because they're more like short stories rather than what you would imagine an academic essay would look like. So there are a series of 23 essays. It was published in 2002, I believe, and right after, sort of as a reaction to the 9/11 event. But instead of focusing on the tragedy and the grief, she sort of take a different approach and kind of use that sort of experience to question the American way of life. Why is violence so predominant? What is the necessity of war, pretty much? Like, she questions certain things, like decisions that we make as humans, individuals, but also as like countries. So she actually explores quite like a big topic. And another big subject in all of her essays is actually environmentalism. So pretty much questioning and like asking people to sort of be conscious about the environment and questioning how our consumption sort of affects the earth as a whole. So yeah, I'm currently working through it. So
What's your favorite essay?
I believe it's like the close to last or the last chapter essay. It's called God's Wife's Measuring Spoons. I don't want to spoil the short story because they are actually really, really short. And if I like say it, then the whole story will be spoiled. But the sort of main message is sort of telling people to pick and choose who you wish to surround yourself with, right? We often, especially with like media and publicity, we often get caught up in worrying about like, oh, what's that person's going to think of me if I do this, or what's that other person's going to think of me. And so that sort of story, she went on to sort of focusing on why are we so fixated on worrying about other people's perception of us. There's a paragraph in there that is quite interesting. Talks about how like others can sort of see your front and your back. So like you're the outside of you, but you as yourself, you live inside. So you've got to make peace with yourself. You can't please everybody. And she also emphasized sort of this idea of you got to live with hope, like be hopeful. You look through the lens of hope and you surround yourself with the people who support you and try and be a better person by following the values that you believe in. And that's sort of the general theme of most of her essays, is circling around the idea of hope in reaction to a tragedy rather than focusing on grief, which is why I find like her essays quite an interesting take to an event that is so tragic, right? It was like a tragic event, but she sort of looked at it from a different lens, look at it as a way to sort of move forward from there.
You said that this book was nonfiction. I'm trying to understand what, like, is it just the 9/11 part of it that's nonfiction, or is she is she a survivor? Is there some connection in that way?
It is a nonfiction because all of the stories in the 23 essays are all either about her own life, her real life, her family, her children. There are essays where she'll talk about like her vegetable garden, where she like grew vegetables, which is what she was referring to as like God's measuring spoon, is like her gourds that she grew in like her garden, so that she can become self-sufficient and not rely on like giant grocery stores or international shipments of food. So that part is where all the nonfiction is. And a lot of times she will discuss historical figures, famous authors, Walt Whitman's work, or Martin Luther King, or like, actual real life people. And if it's not her own story, she would talk about things that she read on the newspaper or in the media, and then she'll sort of relay that into her story and sort of elaborate on what she thinks of the story itself.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying that. So would you say that this is almost like a motivational book?
I would say so, yes. It's definitely a positive spin on a lot of things. It definitely has like a very hopeful tone in all of her essays. She would question, like, there is the aspect of being critical in terms of analyzing some of the stories. Like, she'll talk about war and she'll be critical about it, and she'll talk about like why is violence sort of always the first choice as a retaliation, right? It hurts to see tragic events happen, but almost immediately we react with the same violence back. So that part she would like be critical about, but she'd usually find a way to transition into sort of either suggesting an alternative to solve an issue, or sort of talk to us, like go through her thought process, pretty much help us go through her thought process of how to look at a certain event from a different angle, either as a mother, a woman, or like through her children, right? She teaches her children the same way of like being conscious about the environment, and then how like her children keeps chickens as pets and then start like cooking eggs from the same chicken that she grew. So it's that sort of spin on things that we kind of sometimes forget, that there are different ways to look at it. It's not always just like, oh, if we don't fight, then we'll get bullied type thing. It's not always like there are only two options. She sort of takes us away from it and be like, okay, let's look at it from maybe a slightly different point of view and see a more peaceful resolution to some of the things that we see, or some of the problems that the world have right now.
That's interesting. Something that you said kind of like piqued my interest. It used to be that, so I am also an international student and migrant like Jenny. It used to be that back home we all had our own garden. Like whether you were like living in the city, whether you were living in the suburbs, whether you were living in the village, you always had, like, I remember my grandmom, she had like banana trees, she had like coconut trees, like within a city. Like she'd get her mail delivered and stuff, and there was like a supermarket right next door, but she had a huge tree. It's almost unbelievable to me now when I think of it, like where am I going to have any kind of plantation where I'm living at the moment? And then I'll actually need a lot of area to grow plants at the moment. But for her, she had so much fruit and vegetables growing around her that she was pretty much self-sufficient on her own. Something that I think all of my relatives used to practice before. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a phrase in here that says, think globally, but act locally. So it's sort of like you think about the environment, you think about the earth as a whole, and to help it, you kind of create your own garden. You support local businesses, you support local farmers, so that you reduce the amount of shipments of, we don't need bananas all the way across the ocean, right? We don't need to have like all these huge ships to just travel half the ocean away to get to us, when we could just plant it in our backyards or start a farm full of bananas, right? So I think that really stuck with me as well. It's like she has quite a number of quotes that would really stick to your mind and like make you think.
Is that one of her quotes? Think globally, act. I mean, I've heard that so many times. I'm really.
I can't remember exactly if it was like in a review or if it was like, but it was somewhat related to this book in a way.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
that's fine. I was just curious. Jenny, have you read that book?
No, actually, I'm trying to get into nonfiction myself. It is definitely an area that I haven't felt that comfortable enough to dive into yet.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, But it sounds like it's a very, interesting read, just based on like how Lynn explained. So I would definitely pick it up and read it. I'm trying to branch out of my comfort zone, which is novels. So yeah, that's a great pick. Thank you so much for the recommendation.
Yeah, thanks both of you. I'm just curious to know, Lynn, why do you think that this would be a great read for our audience?
I know that nonfictions are a tough sell in general, but the essays are, like I said, more like short stories. You're not going to see like numbers or statistics or anything very dry and boring. They're actually like literally short stories about her life, and then she goes on to like talk about her thought process. So they're not at all like dry or boring. So just want to put it out there if anyone is like feeling a bit hesitant about trying nonfiction. And they are very short. They're usually only like 20, 30 pages long for each of the essay. And the flow is very nice. So you'd actually don't feel that you're actually reading all that much, simply because of how the way she tells her story and the way she tells what she thinks. And the other reason is that if you actually want to increase your sort of vocabulary range, this might be a good book for that. There are quite a number of like complex words and complex sentence structures in this book, but because they are condensed into short stories, you don't have to even read them in chronological order or like anything. They're not following any order. They're standalone sort of stories. So you can just like one day be like, I feel like reading a 20-page text, and you can just pick it up and choose a chapter. And that's sort of where you wouldn't feel this sort of overwhelmed need to finish, 200 pages of complex words when you're just focusing on this 20-page, and you can take your time and sort of go through, try and join her in the critical thinking process as well while you're learning.
No, I think we have a good mix of options here today. One is a more simpler kind of literature. One is a little more complex, but both have like really good storylines. So I think for those of you who are watching, these are really good examples for you to kind of grab if you're looking to read during the summer. I'm curious to know, Jenny, do you have are you reading something else? Do you want to recommend something else to our viewers today?
I try to stay within kind of novel side. But I just recently finished a book called Of Woman and Salt by Gabriela Garcia. It's a new book. I remember it was just published like a couple months ago. I think, and it's one of the books that we chose at my book club at work that we all read together. And I just finished it like a couple of days ago, and that's a really interesting book as well. It's about immigrants, family of an immigrant, but it's kind of a similar in terms of like the way it's structured, I guess, with this book, that each chapter is about different characters in that family. But then a lot different from this book is that book is really sounding more like a short story of that person's life, in that character's life in that chapter. Whereas this book those stories all connect to one big main storyline where everything kind of intertwines, and like, you kind of get to experience what's going to happen all together. Whereas that book is more about individual characters' storyline within the same family and how they're affecting each other's life with different timelines. So I would say that book is interesting as well to read. And there are a lot of different aspects that you can also discuss from that book with your friends if you read it with your friend. There are some currently related topics, I guess, that you can discuss for sure. So I would recommend that book too.
Thank you. Are you enjoying your time at the book club?
Yeah, I thought that maybe if I want to read more books, maybe my colleagues would like to do the same thing. And sure enough, I had a few interests. So we started the book club I would say September or October of last year. And then we are currently, going through, I think, 5th book together. So it's going well, and it's actually really fun. I would recommend our audience to think about, sharing a book with a friend, like read it at the same time. Because when you read a book together and you get to discuss it, it's a lot more fun because you actually get to talk about the book with someone who actually read the book at the same time. And it's a different experience that I think it's very exciting and interesting as well for our audience. So I would recommend that too.
Thank you for the recommendation, Jenny. When this book club topic I found it in my inbox, I was very interested, but I don't know, lately I've just not been able to hold down a book. Like I'll read a couple pages and my mind will immediately wander and I'll have to do something else or I'll think about something else. I used to read so much as a kid. I'll probably join because it sounds really interesting. It's right up my alley.
Anytime you want to join, you're welcome.
Thank you. Lynn, I want to know your thoughts about the book club.
Oh, I love it. One of the OG members here.
Yeah.
I've been with the book club since it started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I read all the books. And
yeah, you have.
Yeah, I've been keeping up. So yeah, it's definitely. Before joining the book club, I kept getting like books as like presents from like people, and like I was like, I need to read this because somebody gave it to me, and now it's almost like a requirement that I have to read. But I was struggling. Same thing as you were saying, Swati. That sometimes it's just tough. Life happens, and then now you're like, oh yeah, I can't spend like 30 minutes to read this. But it helps when there is like sort of a group of people as a motivation too. Not just it's fun to discuss, but it's also really motivating to know that other people are also trying to find time and read. And if you catch up, you'll get to like talk about it. It's almost like trying to watch a movie together, but not together.
Everyone has different pace, obviously, and everyone has different, time that they choose to read a book. So some people read it every day, but some people, choose to read it on the weekend when they have like time to sit down and do it. And so whenever we kind of check in with each other, someone would say, I finished in like one sitting, and we'll be like, whoa. And, I sometimes struggle to keep up because sometimes I need more time to really focus on the book. As an international student, I always had little bit more encouragement, I would say, to read a book. So this was definitely it. And that really helped me to like keep it going. And I knew that, someone else is almost finished. I should be also finishing soon. Like we should discuss it all together. I shouldn't miss out on this. So then I kept motivating myself to do it. So I think that that's why I really enjoy it too, because I get the motivation from other people. And yeah, it's amazing. It's great.
Thank you. So that's interesting. I mean, if you are, even for people who are watching, if you aren't somebody who usually reads books, but you want to get into it because you want to develop your English language or you just want to read, I think joining a book club might be a great way to start. I think that's a good idea. I like that. But thank you, Jenny and Lynn, for joining us and sharing your book recommendations. I'm very happy to have you guys here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was our episode. If you have any questions, please comment below and we can address it on our next episode. We also provide KAEL test lessons on a separate playlist. It's called KAEL Prep with Brandy, and we drop a lesson every week. Please do check it out. We also have some exciting news for you. KAEL is now available online to be taken at home. If you are in Japan, Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Canada, or USA, you can take the KAEL test online at home. It's a wonderful opportunity to start your journey to Canada right at home. Please also note that if you are an international student living abroad or in Canada, you may be eligible for the KAEL scholarship. If you took the KAEL test in any of our available locations on or after July 2020, or if you're planning to take one soon, please do check us out. I will link our scholarship page below. If you have any questions about your eligibility or the deadline, please let me know in the comments below. Until then, please stay safe and have a nice weekend.